Hi everybody, this is Debbie from Teacher Success Coach. How are you guys doing? Well, I am grateful to be back at school because I do feel my students need me and I need to get them through to support them through to the exams. However, we got back in yesterday because Tuesday was teachers training and yesterday the students were back. And today is the second day back. But it feels as if we have been in school for a while now. It is beginning to feel very stressful and tired. I think the reason why it's beginning to feel tired, there is a countdown to the days that we've got left before the students have exams. And they're reminding us of, oh miss, we've got the exam coming, we've got 23 days, we've got 33 days, and it's a countdown. So as well as the students feeling stressed, you too feeling stressed as a teacher, because you're thinking, oh my goodness, would you be able to get through the contents with the students? Because in some of my classes, we still have some contents to cover. And I beginning to feel as if I'm also beginning to be slightly anxious for the students and anxious for the fact that there's still some work to cover. But what I've also started to do with my other group today is I started going back into meditation and going back into classical music and going back into, in terms of the gratitude, because I feel those things help me and I know it also helped my students. So that's what I've started going back into and giving them the various quotes in terms of I am able to do it, I believe in myself and all these things, because I realized that although we've only come back in yesterday, it's just beginning to feel overwhelmed. And the fact that I'm feeling slightly overwhelmed, I also know the students are also feeling overwhelmed. So my duty as a teacher is to make sure I center them and make them feel a lot more connected. So that is what I've started doing with one group I had today, because I realized that the group of students I had, they were feeling so overwhelmed, they were feeling anxious. Some of the things were saying, oh my goodness, miss, we've got still so much work to cover. And I'm saying to them, don't worry, we're going to get it done. It's okay. It's under control. But the aspect of me that is also feeling slightly anxious, but they don't need to know that, because I need to support them in feeling confident. So that's one of the things I'm glad that we are back, because it's to give the students direction and support and encouragement and remind them that they are capable of doing what they actually plan out to do. And another thing is getting them to do the plan and getting them to stick to it, because as we know, young people tend to make plans and some of them, the plans fall apart when they're doing other things. So one of the things I've been getting them to do is stay on course. It's been quite stressful, but it's been worth it, because I can actually see, the progression, although they've only come back in yesterday, as I said. But we've got a task ahead of us, because this group of students have not done exams. So they don't even know what exams look like. Yes, we've given them marks, but it's still not the real thing. So in a real public exam, they don't know what that looks like, because they've never had public exams. So that's another part we need to deal with the student, supporting them in feeling that it is okay and it'll be okay. So carers, parents, aunts, uncles, etc., there's no point in putting pressure on the young people. What you need to do is support them and encourage them, because there is no point in saying to them, oh, well, you have to do it, you have to get the grade. No. That's putting extra pressure on them. You're encouraging them, you're empowering them, reminding them of their greatness and reminding them that, of course, you're able to do it. Of course, it could be done. Yes, you've got 3 weeks. Of course, you could do it in 3 weeks. We just have to have a structure. And there's no point in them sitting there, doing 1 hour at a time. That's a waste of time. That doesn't work. You need to encourage them to do 20 minutes at a time and take a little between 3 and 5 minutes break, and then go back to it. Because you'll find that when they do like chunks every 20 minutes and then a 2-minute break, probably listen to classical music, listen to calming music, any of those things, and then they go back for the next 20 minutes. There is no point in sitting there constantly an hour at a time. That doesn't work. It doesn't matter what they think. Another thing is, in terms of studying, I would strongly suggest, especially let's say when you have holidays or when you're on weekend or when you're on study leave, you start doing some studies from 9 o'clock, let's say from 9 until 12. You take an hour break for lunch, complete hour break, and then you go back from 1 to 4. That's it. That's it. Remember, you do it in 20 minutes chunks. So that's some of the things that I'm encouraging my students to do, encouraging them to do a plan, encouraging them to do a timetable, also encouraging them to sleep well, have breaks, drink a lot of water, go out for walks. You know, for example, when they decide to have their lunch, 1 hour lunch break on a weekend, when they're doing the plan, go out for a walk. Have complete cutout. And when you actually go for a walk, there's sometimes you just think things over, and something you might have forgotten through your walking through the fields or walking through, you know, the park, etc. You might remember it because your mind in a very relaxed state. The more relaxed your mind is, the more you're able to remember information, because the mind actually blocks under pressure. Because when you're under pressure, it just goes out of your mind, because that's what pressure does and that's what stress does. So the more relaxed you are, the more you're going to remember. It's interesting because yesterday I've got a new set of students I'm teaching. I'm also teaching health and social care as well as psychology and sociology. And one of the students I had yesterday, yes, I'm very passionate about teaching. I'm very passionate about education. I'm very passionate about knowledge. I'm just passionate, basically. So one of the areas we were looking at yesterday was the formation of the welfare system. And that's an area I know very, very well, because I also looked at that as part of my degree when I did my social science degree. So yesterday I was trying to, you know, explain it to the students, and I'm always getting really passionate. One student said, it's really conditioning, and we need to watch the words that we use, the words that we're hearing, and how we respond to the words that we're hearing. Words are very, very powerful. And as we know, we are conditioned into certain terminology, and those terminology then becomes your reality because you hear it so many times. It becomes part and parcel of your own terminology. So those are things we need to be careful about, and how we say that. So we're looking at the welfare state, etc. And then we, you know, I crossed over and we were looking at inequality in health and the various groups that suffer inequality as a result of, you know, a number of groups that going through inequality and in terms of how they access health. So one student, a very well, I see that student has been very manipulative. That's a student I really need to watch in terms of how she could actually how she actually connect with the group. Anyway, she said to me, Miss, you're really angry. You really yeah, she said you're really angry, and you she said I was angry and I was something, not upset. She said I was angry on something else, can't remember. And I said to her, pause. What do you mean that I'm angry? And another student said to her, what do you mean? And then she said, you know, how I was talking. And I said to her, okay, pause a second. I said, I do feel that what you need to use is passionate, not angry or aggressive. Yeah, that's what she said, angry and aggressive. Not angry, nor is it aggression. It is passionate. And remember, we spoke about individual differences earlier on, and we also spoke about different culture groups. I want you to process that information. I also want you to tell me why you equate that with aggression and angry. This is so interesting, right? Because too often when Black people are very passionate about a topic or a situation, it is very often mistaken as aggression. And we need to be very careful when we're looking at those three words: passionate, aggression, and angry. Those three words we need to be very, very careful about. And I had to go into one long explanation in the class regarding that situation. And it was interesting because I then said to that student, I want you to process that information and I want you to reflect in terms of how you see aggression, how you see anger. And I want you to connect it with different cultures and see how different culture would express themselves. I also then want you to look at individual differences, because it is so very important that we begin to appreciate individual differences, because that's very, very powerful. Because if we are failing to appreciate individual differences, then we have a problem. Because it means that we are not appreciative or understanding of individual differences. When she actually said that, something else she had said was, oh, ex-teacher teaches this way. I said, we need to be very careful of that. I am not this teacher. I am my teacher. I am an individual. So one of the things that I do feel that we need to remind people about is the comparison. And I then went into one long session about I do not want them to compare themselves with each other. I want them to compare themselves with themselves previously, right? And I want them to start appreciating individual differences, because there's a lot to learn from individual differences and where individuals are coming from. So that was interesting, because another student was then, taking her to task and saying, can you explain, etc., etc. And as I kept saying to my student, I want you to reflect, because words are very, very powerful. So when you use certain words, you need to ask yourself, why is it you use that word? You then also have to look at it. Okay, is it aggression? Is it anger? Or is it passion? Because as I then explained to the student, there was nothing I could be angry about. There is nothing I could be aggressive about, because I'm doing what I love. So that's something I had to ask her to reflect on. And I also asked her to pause, because something I say to my student all the time: pause, take a deep breath, pause, reflect. Because I think it's very, very important. Because I don't believe in shouting at students. I don't believe in, telling them off unnecessarily. I always say to them, pause. I want you to pause and put a pin in it, and then just start reflecting on that. Because I think it's very, 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 very important that we encourage students to reflect, and we encourage students to be critical thinkers, because school doesn't allow that. School doesn't give them the space to do that, because students do not feel that they could challenge teachers. And I think it's very important that they're allowed to challenge teachers in a very positive way, instead of not being able to express themselves. So yesterday was a very, very interesting session. Even my students today as well, they had so many things to say about, this teacher isn't doing that, etc. I'm not interested. I want you to reflect and go back and have a conversation with the teacher, because it's very, very important that students start having a voice, and we empower students to talk to teachers so they feel comfortable enough to challenge a topic if a topic needs challenging, but in a very positive way. And that is something we need to start encouraging young people to do. To challenge, but positively, and to think very critically. And therefore, when they actually question, they question in a very critical way, than just becoming very passive individuals. It is very, very important we need to do it, because education, I personally feel that education doesn't allow that. Yes, I love education, but I think the institution actually program individual, and it doesn't allow students to be critical thinkers.